It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Renee's here, Andy's here, and a very special visitor, Adam Enks, celebrating the 30th anniversary of his Mac newsletter, Tidbits. We'll talk about Apple and Google getting together to help track down coronavirus. Is it a privacy threat or a good idea? Both Renee and I will talk about the new MacBook Air. I think we both like it. The OnePlus 8 is out, but where's the iPhone SE? And a whole lot more. MacBreak Weekly coming up next. MacBreak Weekly comes to you from Twit's LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether they're working in the office or from home. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit. This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 709, recorded Tuesday, April 14th, 2020. Masks and Meringue. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Matthias, the Macintosh keyboard experts. Have you been asked to work from home? Do you have your office set up? Matthias has you covered with beautiful options you can't find anywhere else. Visit Matthias at matias.ca/MacBreak for 10% off your purchase. And by LastPass. From access to authentication to passwords, LastPass manages every entry point to your business so you can mitigate risk while improving employee productivity. Visit lastpass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest Apple news. Coming to you from the Twit LastPass Studios, where we are locked in and sanitized at all times. Fortunately, our hosts have never left the house anyway, so it's just, they're right at home. Renee Ritchie from Renee Ritchie's YouTube channel. I need a name for it. You have a name for it?
Allow myself to introduce me.
Allow myself to introduce me.com.
Yeah, no, I don't. I wasn't smart enough to get a show name, Leo, but I had, like I said, I just had this old Renee Ritchie YouTube channel and had all the features grandfathered, grandparented in. So I rolled with it. I took convenience over branding.
Yeah, perfect. And what does your hat say? Is that a Renee Ritchie branded hat? No, it's a Canada hat.
Yeah, I want the world to know that we're, just a friendly people and that we're here in your hour of maple syrup need.
Renee was on Twit this week. Fabulous with Georgia Dow and O'Docta.
Much fun.
We thought, given we had Georgia and Owen, that we needed somebody with some gravitas on the show. So you did a great job holding down that end.
It went so fast.
Yeah, it was really.
I looked up and it was like 3 hours later.
It was a really long show, and it got really long because it felt like we had just gotten started, even 2 hours in. It was really fun.
Owen might have declared war on Canada for about 5 minutes there. Like about 5 minutes, I think we were actually at war, but we.
I never quite know with Owen. You know, he gets on his soapbox and rants, but that's what we love about him.
So much fun.
Andy and Akko also here. It's great to see you, Andrew.
Great to see everybody. Exactly. If I have to say I'm doing fine, but if the takeout place that has subs and burgers and pizza right next door decided to fold up tent, I would be on hot dogs and rice very, very quickly, and we'd be very, very sad.
Andy is standing with his flintlock at the border to keep the New Yorkers out, and you keep up that good work right there.
And it's not even postseason of the Major League Baseball season. Who knew? It was good practice.
And we have a big, big anniversary to celebrate. No, I know you're thinking, you see up here, it says the 15th anniversary of Twit. We are pikers. We are children compared to this guy right here, Adam Enks of Tidbits. Hello, Adam, and congratulations.
Hello, Leo. Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
It was 30 years yesterday.
It actually will be exactly on Thursday.
Okay.
April 16th, 1990 is the date of the first Tidbits issue. And it's you can read all about Novell and WordPerfect and screensavers. There's some stuff in screensavers in that first issue. It's kind of fun. A little embarrassing when you go back and look at what you did when you were 23.
What? So you were just a kid at a school, or what was the story behind it?
Yeah, pretty much. Tanya and I had graduated from Cornell in 1989, and she was working at Cornell, and this was 1990. and I was doing consulting in Ithaca, and she was working in the group that sold computers. And it's called Microcomputers and Office Systems at the time, or MOS, as in a Rolling Stone gathers no. And her coworkers were not actually that up on a lot of the computer stuff, because Microcomputers and Office Systems also sold things like copiers and fax machines, and that's where most of the other people had come from. So she decided she was going to do this little newsletter to keep her colleagues up on what was going on. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. She wanted to do it in PageMaker. She's actually doing it in print because she had, page layout background, and wanted to keep her skills up. And I said, well, if you're going to do it in PageMaker, I'll be happy to help you. I think it's a lot of fun. And I'm going to do it in HyperCard, because I was really into HyperCard at the time.
Perfect.
The print version lasted 2 weeks, as I remember, and the HyperCard version lasted 99, and Tidbits is now up to issue 1509.
Wow. I'm looking at Tidbits 1 from 16 April 1990. I love this. In a blow to industry leader Microsoft, Lotus and Novell merged last week to form a corporation worth about $1.5 billion. How's Microsoft?
I didn't know there was that much money in the tech industry.
It's like Austin Powers. $1.5 billion? No, you mean...
How's Microsoft doing? Did they survive the merger of Lotus and Novell? Wow, $1.5 billion. This is, it is fun. When I go back and look at, old screensavers and stuff like that, it's just...
Oh, and the second monitor for the SE? Oh, that was,
the SE needed a second monitor.
I have been a 2-monitor guy from day one, and I can prove it.
HyperCard, meet D-Base. Ooh, stand back.
Because, you knew that was going to be big.
Wow. Things have changed.
So
now, this is fun. It, by the way. This is the whole, it was one page.
Oh, no. Those are articles.
Oh, there's more. Okay.
There's more.
I'm just TLDR. I'm reading the summary. Yeah. Oh, good. All right. Macworld Expo is still around.
All the founders were still at Microsoft.
Yeah. This is, congratulations. 30 years in any business is a forever. But in the tech news industry, that's amazing.
Well, it's been fun, and periodically I go back. I actually get into these little, like news will be slow for a little while. I'm like, I need someone to write something. So I'll like dive into the archives and pull some article out from 15 years ago or 20 years ago and write about it. And it's a huge amount of fun, and I think I should do this more often because it's so neat to look back. And then stuff gets busy again, and I don't do it for 6 months or a year because it's Apple. Apple doesn't slow down these days very often.
It's funny because when we go back to the first, Twit, go back 15 years, it's still a recognizable industry. But when you go back 30 years, for instance, here's the hot flash. For anyone working on a 2CI with After Dark, the screensaver from Berkeley Systems, you should upgrade to version 1.1C because it fixes a bug that causes crashers while DAs are open and the screensaver kicks in. Desktop accessories for those not in the know.
But we still haven't gotten back to After Dark level screensavers. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's a new randomizer in it, which allows a screensaver to switch modules. There's Spheres, which draws 3D spheres on your screen. I always did like Drano. I remember that one. Swirls your Mac down the drain in the middle of the screen. Tactiles fills the screen with a tile pattern. Also, Shredded Crystals and Starry Skyline. Of course, After Dark was the Berkeley Systems was the company that gave you the flying toasters.
Yeah.
That
was back when, Bruce Burkhalter was actually, one of the guys working on it and would just post and be the fact that he had posted on something. I don't know, Infomac Digest,
his email address is still berkeley.edu, so
you can probably still get in touch with him.
Yeah.
Every now and then you do that. You look at something like, whoa, that's still live.
Wow. Outbound, the Outbound portable Macintosh. Remember that?
Yeah.
Also known as the Wallaby.
It was a Hackintosh because they took the Apple hardware and reconfigured it, as I remember. There wasn't.
Yeah, you
had to pull the ROMs from your Mac Plus, put them inside the Wallaby, and then if you wanted to use the Mac Plus again, you could tether the Mac Plus back to the Wallaby to get access to those ROMs.
I love this. And by the way, your correspondent there is one Alex Pornell, who is, of course, still around, Jerry Pornell's son. Refilling desk writer cartridges. Well, the ink is so expensive.
Some things just
you can
never
that we're still doing. You can replace it with quality fountain pen ink.
Yeah, I don't know if the fountain pen ink still works.
Where would you get that fountain pen ink these days?
At the Inkery, Leo. At the Inkery,
yes,
local Inkery.
Of course.
Don't the Moleskine people sell it?
Yeah, maybe. Oh my! Hey, Adam, that's so great. Are you going to do anything to celebrate?
We did an article in Tidbits, but it was short, and it's tough because, as I was kind of saying in the article, is things are just so weird right now.
Yeah, you can't exactly have a party.
No, and it just you don't even feel like having a party, and so kind of where I went with the article was just that. Yeah, I've got this term, the uncertainty horizon. We have no idea, what the uncertainty horizon is at this point. Next week will probably be like this week, but after that, hard to say. And so, in that kind of I think that the best thing I could say, and what I say in the article is that what I can promise you with Tidbits is you'll have it on Monday, and next Monday, and the Monday after that.
How is it that you guys have done that? I mean, that's the thing that's most amazing. In a day and age where people, 7,000 podcasts start every week, of which fewer than 500 survive to the second week. Yeah. 30 years. And have you ever missed an issue?
So we take four issues off a year, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, and then 2 weeks at the end of the year for Christmas and New Year's. So that's scheduled. And when we moved from Ithaca to Seattle in 1991, Mark Anbinder, a friend of ours, actually kind of put out Tidbits for us for a couple of weeks, simply because we couldn't get internet access. I mean, you didn't just get internet access in 1991. You had to find it. So that was kind of interesting. And there have been a couple of others over the years where we've had to just call it for, we're not going to do an issue this week because of travel or something like that. But we've often, it's been quite a few years now that we've had people helping us with Tidbits. We don't, it is not just me. And so, even, like in 1998, Tanya and I spent a month in Australia. And, Jeff Duncan, Jeff Carlson, Glenn Fleischman basically put the issues out during that time for us with no interaction from us at all. So, yeah, we do a lot, but the joke has always been that people think I write everything, and it's so completely and utterly not true. But I think people do get that impression sometimes.
Yeah,
you're definitely the Stan Lee of Tidbits, though. You're everyone assumes that you draw it, you write it, you edit it. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, yeah. So even when I don't write stuff, as long as I'm not traveling in Australia and it's 1998, I do read and edit basically everything. And those who read Tidbits know we have a pretty consistent voice because of that. So it's not I will edit pretty heavily, so there are things in articles which I have written complete paragraphs of because needed to be there, and, happy to let the author recast what I wrote, but, there needs to be something about this. So it does change a little bit that way. But again, we got to go on vacation last year. And so for a couple of weeks when we were in Switzerland, Josh Centers put out the entire thing on his own with help from the usual contributors. So it was great.
And how long did you stay in Seattle? That wasn't a long-lasting trip.
Well, no, we were in Seattle from 91 to 2001. Oh,
long time. But we went back home, though, after a while.
Yeah. And it's interesting. That was, obviously during the .com run-up and bust, really. But Glenn Fleischman posted something on YouTube a while back. He found there was an NBC nightly news report about the streaming of the first Hollywood movie on the internet. And it was a movie called Party Girl with Parker Posey, and it was streamed from Glenn's offices. He had a point company, and he invited me, and I was there, and Tanya was there, and our friend Quinn, who is a long time still there, Apple DTS person, was visiting at the time, and so he came with us, and so we're all in this video that Glenn has found and posted on YouTube from must be like 1998. I forget exactly what the date is, but we're all looking really young.
And Parker Posey hasn't aged a bit, and it's kind of funny because I wonder if she knows she was the first. Hers was the first movie ever streamed.
She does. She was interviewed on it as well.
That's awesome.
But this is, postage stamp size video.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think it was See You, See Me that they were using, which is the Cornell video conferencing software that kicked everything off.
That's when you know you're getting old, because when all of a sudden, after so long, that was the first time, and very soon we're seeing the last movie on a CD or rather on a DVD or a Blu-ray, because they'll all be streamed. That's when you know you're.
Well, I mean, we've already seen the
giving
movies
up my
going
vinyl.
straight to streaming.
Yeah, that's right.
No
That's
theaters
right.
now,
No theater
so-
even. Yeah.
Right.
I watched Invisible Man the other night, which was supposed to be on a screen right now, but it's not. Great movie.
I'm never giving up my vinyl movies, Leo. They're more authentic.
You still have the movie record player? Yeah.
Yes.
Laser discs.
Those actually, there were the old capacitive. What were they called?
CED.
CED.
There was the
RCA.
optical. There's the optical version, but then there was the CED capacitance selector. I don't know what it stands for. CED by RCA, the Select Division, where the entire platter was like a huge cartridge that was about the size of a prison lunch
And it
tray.
had grooves.
Yep. No, it was an actual. It was a needle that actually picked up an analog signal, then reconstituted it as video. Wow. Which was here's a bit of nostalgia. Like if you were let's say that your family had one and you were like a 12 or 13-year-old boy who was just discovering that they like girls, and there was one scene in a comedy where there was nudity. The drawback of the system was that when the family sat down to watch it, like maybe a few weeks later, they would see that it seems to be skipping.
Somebody's been watching that a lot over and over. Yeah. Well, Adam, deepest congratulations. I would send you a cupcake, but we can't even do that these days. I think it's just really wonderful. And we're going to be in exactly that same boat, because Sunday we'll celebrate our 15th anniversary of Twit.
As a congratulations for that too, because let me tell you, you never expect these things, and then suddenly, like, wow, I've been doing this for 15 years, and then 20 years rolls around, and you're like, I can't believe I just thought it was 15.
Well, I wish I had started as young as you. That's my problem. Another 15 years, I'm going to be very old, so I don't know. I don't know if we're going to make 30, but who knows? You never know. I mean,
you'll have a floating chair, Leo, and you'll be semi-AI.
Yeah.
Some guy was telling me he was looking forward to our 50th anniversary, and I'm like, oh, really? That's kind of scary.
Well, what about that? Do you and Tanya contemplate retirement at all?
It's hard to say exactly. I mean, at this point, Tidbits, I won't say it's not like self-sustaining or anything. It can't like it do itself on its own, but we're pretty good at it. So it's not that hard, and just kind of the way life is for me.
It's part of your daily routine, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so, I can't say that it's going to go on forever, but I have no particular plans to stop, because I don't know what else I'd do. I mean, if I ever came up with something I wanted to do more, maybe I'd do that.
I think it's a little late for that, Adam. I don't want to say anything, but maybe you're stuck doing Tidbits.
Career.
I want to play the violin too, but I don't think that's in the cards. Anyway, congratulations. That's wonderful. It's really great. We'll take a little break and come back, and there's actual news and so forth. One of the things, there's one company a little older than Tidbits, believe it or not, and it's our sponsor today. And I'm sure you managed at some point to talk a little bit about Matthias keyboards in your many years at
Edgar's
Tidbits.
a friend.
Edgar's a great guy in Canada, but I think is he in Toronto? I think they're around Europe.
Everyone's in Toronto.
Everyone's in Toronto.
We store most of our people there.
Edgar is a keyboard nut. They started Matthias Keyboards in 1989, so only 1 year before Tidbits. They're in their 31st year. They have always made keyboards, and actually they were a software company, as I remember, when they first started. But when they started doing physical hardware, they've always made keyboards for Mac lovers. And keyboards, you know, I should show you. I have a bunch of Matthias keyboards here. But this one, if you're a Mac fan, if you've been around almost as long as Adam Engst, you'll recognize this. This is their Tactile Pro Keyboard. And it will have a certain resonance for anybody who is a Mac fan. That is, isn't that Apple stopped making these, but not Matthias. In fact, they've made them better. They're using Alps switches now, so they're the best tactile keyboard I've ever used. They really feel good. This is the Tactile Pro. It's got the little feet. You remember? It's still got the little feet, but it's now USB. I don't think this one was USB. Maybe it was. I'm guessing this might have been ADB.
So we wrote about that in 2004. The article's "The Majestic Alps and the King of Keyboards."
The King of Keyboards. Oh, so Apple was using an Alps switch too. Yeah, the Alps. Unfortunately, a lot of the tactile keyboards have gone to these cherry switches, but the Alps, to me, still are the best, I think.
Well, I remember having these great conversations with Edgar when he was working on this keyboard, because initially he'd found like a cache of them. You know, like he found like 1 million that he could buy.
Wow.
And they weren't being made. And so initially he was working his way through that set, and then it was popular enough that he was able to get a factory to spin up and start making them again.
That's so
because
great.
You know, they feel great.
Oh, they do. I mean, these, believe me, when the ads are over, these are going home with me. I'm not sending them back. This if you want one that's a little quieter, same great switches, but not they've lost the clicky. But what I love about these is they have USB on both sides. So you connect the keyboard up and you've got room to connect the mouse on the other side. I just think, and whichever side you prefer, and as a lefty, I really appreciate that. This one, this one has 3. So connect the keyboard there. You connect your mouse on whichever side you prefer, and you still have a free slot for, I don't know, a USB key or any other device. It's a USB hub. They also make beautiful aluminum keyboards if you want something that seems a little bit more modern. Very much like the Apple keyboards, but these are like the Apple keyboards that Apple stopped making. This is the wired one, and this is the 10 key. So they make 10 keyless as well if you don't want the number pad. But they do such a nice job with the inverted T. It just feels good. And this one's nice because it's got backlit LEDs, and I love this little knob. I don't know anybody else who does this. It lets you change the color of the LED, not software. It's got a knob, so you dial in the color that you like best. They also have wireless. Now, one of the things I really like about the wireless keyboards, these are multi-point pairing. So you can pair it to your Mac, but you can also pair it to a Windows machine or a Linux machine and switch literally with a touch of a button. There are 4 buttons. Oh, look, it's rose gold. Now that no one's here, I can open all these. Finally, this is beautiful. They still make a rose gold one. Actually, that's what Micah took home. But
embrace the pink. Just call it pink. Pink is a lovely color.
It's a beautiful pink.
Christina Warren is on her way to steal it from you right now.
Yes. I think we were going to send her one just so she could have it. What's nice about this, they put a big battery in it. This is the battery. It's as big as a smartphone battery. So this keyboard, you charge it, it'll last all year between charges. But then, I know, isn't that amazing? But then,
I got a room to charge the keyboard. It's January.
It's January. Just, when you change the batteries in the smoke
furnace
detector.
filters and recharge the keyboard. Yeah.
And then it's got these 4 buttons here. This is the multi-point pairing. So I press this button. Suddenly it's a Mac keyboard with all the Mac functionality. Press this button. button, it goes over to my Windows computer, and it's got the keys reconfigured to match Windows. So I think it's really nice because you get all of the functionality of the platform you're on. They work great with Windows, Mac, Linux, any kind of computing system. Although I always hate getting keyboards and getting those Windows keys. This is a true command key. You got your fan key. That's important. Matthias is the keyboard company. Edgar is, in fact, when I met Edgar for the first time, we talked. I feel bad for anybody else on the call because Edgar and I just went off on keys and keyboards, and he's a real keyboard.
Oh, did you get
nerd.
to talk about keyboard matrices?
No.
Oh, so here's the thing. This used to be I don't know if it's an issue anymore. I don't think so. I think they may have dealt with it. But it used to be that keyboards used one lead for like 4 keys.
Right.
And the idea was you couldn't type those keys fast enough so
Right.
that so it always knew, like, if there was a signal on that lead, it had to be the
Because they're far
key.
separated or something. Yeah.
Right, they were separated, and I remember that for a while there were issues. Again, this is probably back 20 years ago, with if you did certain things too quickly, you could actually confuse the keyboard controllers because they weren't good enough with that. And I think that's gone away, but
God, I only hope. This one has 19 function keys. It goes to F19. Okay, I'm just saying, but this is the one I'm taking home because this is.
That's it.
That's the classic, isn't it? Look, you're gonna if you like keyboards, if you type, you need to have a good keyboard. I know Apple doesn't agree, but I think so. And if you type, you're going to want to get a Matthias. Go to Matthias.ca, nice Canadian company, Matias, Matthias.ca/MacBreak for 10% off. There's also an Ergo keyboard with split key. Actually, this is the best Ergo. You see it right there? It's the best Ergo ever made because these gel cushions for your wrists are so soft, and you split it so your hand's not tilted at an angle when you type. Your wrists and everything is perfectly straight. It is the best ergonomic keyboard ever. You're gonna love your Matthias keyboard. The number one right now seller is the wired aluminum keyboard I have right here, but because it's a worthy successor to Apple's. But I got to tell you, you're no matter what you get, you're gonna love it. And if you don't, they have the best support in the world. Janet and Carmela up there in Aurora will take care of you. Matthias is always happy to answer your questions. Matthias, I love this sponsor because Edgar and I are one. Matthias.ca/MacBreak to get the best keyboard you've ever had. Matthias. The only hard part is choosing. You know, you're going to go up to the site and you can say, well, wait a minute, I want that one. No, but baby, so get a couple. 10% off. Get a couple. I feel like I'm at the airport and they're entering my reservation.
it's more like the guitar, like the keyboard guitar thing that you're playing there.
The keytar? Yeah.
Yeah, the keytar. Oh, yeah,
I'm playing a keytar.
Wait, Keytar Bear. I remember now.
You are the
Andy
Slash of
introduced me to
keytars.
Keytar Bear.
Yeah, there you go.
Matias, Matthias.ca/MacBreak. Thank you, Edgar. Thank you, Matthias. What a great team. And, a lot of people are working at home. So, that keyboard was fine when you weren't hardly using it. But now that you're actually doing work on it, maybe it's time.
It's the rules. You have to have fancy coffee, bubbly water, and a clickety-clackety keyboard. Otherwise, you cannot be in this industry.
They won't know you're working. They won't know you're working.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's
when you're on your Zoom call, they'll know, man. I'm taking notes. No, I'm writing it all down. You're not. You're playing Tetris.
Well, see, that's why it's important to have like 2 keyboards on every one of my desks. I have like the really good cherry key switch keyboard, but I also have like a cheap one where you can't hear me typing.
One, yes.
So that because you never know, maybe we're having an important call, but maybe I'm not. I'm just taking a note, or I'm just looking for something to give you an answer. But well, the thing is, ever since my grandma died, I mean, she was like a second clickety. Andy, no. I was just, I was ordering flowers to be sent to you.
I hate this feature of FaceTime that if it's not the focus, it pauses the video because it's a dead giveaway that you're doing something else. So when I set up my Jitsi server, one of the things I really like about Jitsi, which is an open source kind of like Zoom, is you can leave the screen. It looks like you're paying attention. Don't tell anybody in my family, but I might be doing other things when they're talking to me. But they can't tell. They don't know. All right, let's talk about, this is not a COVID show, and one of the reasons we're still doing the shows and we're still getting together is because we know you need an escape. You need something fun in your life. But Apple has, by the way, I'm not putting away these keyboards. They're staying right here. Not putting them away. This is my studio now. I'm the captain.
I'd love to share these, but, I've contaminated them now with my fingers. So you can have them in 2 weeks, after.
Exactly. I can't send them
No,
back.
you lick everything, Leo. Everything that comes in the studio, you lick it, and then nobody else can touch it.
Now.
Yes. It's like you're 5 years old again, but it works.
Apple has done some interesting things. We're going to get to the Apple Google announcement in a second, but let's start with this one that just came out today. Apple is making its mobility data available, aggregated navigation data from Apple Maps, which will give regions like cities or counties information about its citizens and how they're moving around. It's anonymized. It's a downloadable CSV. So presumably, your data scientist in the county seat can download this. What do you think, Renee? Good idea?
They're doing so much right now. Like, I think in the last 3 days, we've had more reports about the Apple-Google partnership. We've had the Apple Map stuff being added. And there was a third one, which just escapes memory now. But
Apple is letting people with testing centers report to Apple Maps. And then once it's been verified, they'll put it on Apple Maps. So you can now go to Apple Maps and say, I need to get a test. Now, if you look at the map, there's maybe a place in Des Moines.
Yeah. There's one in Podong.
A place in LA.
It's still the same thing for me. It's that I'm so glad the tech companies are stepping up, but I'm so depressed that the tech companies have to step up. I wish the governments were doing more so that the tech companies could add to it, but not seem to be the people who are filling a glaring void in our society.
Well, but it should be a partnership, right? I mean, I think that a public-private partnership is a good thing. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I actually feel exactly the opposite. I would much rather Apple and Google be the entities that are responsible for these potentially really, really powerful tracking and identification tools, rather than the government saying, we have built an app that we now are going to order all device manufacturers and OS manufacturers to install on their devices. Also, we're going to order them to include these APIs. Because I feel as though I can, I don't.
But they'd never work, right? They'd be written in COBOL out of old machine parts.
What I'm thinking is, no, it's more like I would be 400% suspicious that yes, it will do the job it was intended to do right now, but kind of like how TSA and ICE were initially created to deal with immediate problems that could have possibly been solved with these solutions. 2 or 3 years from now, it will be. We've decided that this isn't a pandemic API. This is more of a national safety API. And so we're basically going to extend the breach so that we'll allow local law enforcement and even just interested entities to do individual tracing without notifying the person. And yeah, exactly. So I like the fact that potentially Apple and Google are going to implement this in a way that they think is safe for everybody. I also like the idea that the thing is that they know how to do this. Apple and Google together, they both, between privacy and ubiquity of how to deal with mass data, they both have the same strengths and weaknesses, and they complement each other very well. My fear when this was being discussed a couple of months ago was that someone who doesn't, the only way we can do this is to make sure that every phone always broadcasts its location and a unique identifier to a central server in the government, but Apple and Google say, well, no, we'll talk about this later, but no, there are ways to do this so that what you're asking for is information about a person who has been diagnosed. Who have they been in contact with recently? We can give you exactly that, and only exactly that, unless of course you are asking for an actual mass surveillance tool. But I know you weren't doing that, so we're going to give you exactly what you want, and it'll work great. So that's why I trust Google and Apple more than I trust.
That's an excellent point.
A government such as, I don't know, like the one we've got right now.
For competency and privacy, ironically, because again, like they've tried to make data. Canada famously has tried to make databases that cost 800 times what they said it would, and never, not ever went online. Yeah. And they would probably just go to the carriers and say, just give us everybody's data. We'll sort it out later. So yeah, no.
Yeah.
Point match and not go.
Yeah, I agree in general. I mean, to get back to Leo's original point, however, though, when we was talking about the mobility tracking tool, I was intrigued when that popped up today, and I went and immediately typed some stuff into it. Apple's is only doing major metropolitan areas. So, you can't get very granular data out of it, unfortunately, right now, whereas Google's mobility thing goes down to the county level. And so I was actually, Google's isn't, as you might expect, nearly as interesting to use. You type in, you do a search and you get a PDF you have to look at. But I was able to go and look at how like different counties in New York State are reducing their mobility. And I thought that was an interesting thing to do. And I mean, they're clear about how you can't necessarily compare, New York City with, well, where I live, Tompkins County, just much smaller, much less transit, et cetera, et cetera. But it gives you, particularly for the more rural counties or, comparing urban ones, a much better sense of it. Whereas I felt Apple's tool, it was pretty, but you couldn't look Ithaca up, and my managing editor Josh Centers is in Tennessee, so I looked up Nashville, which is a much bigger city, and nope, Nashville wasn't in it either. So
I wonder why that is. I mean, Apple obviously has data for all of those areas. It's not like there's nobody who uses an iPhone or Apple Maps in Nashville.
Right. So that's it. That's interesting. It confused me a little.
Yeah. Here's the map, the example from the United States. So the baseline, the middle line is zero change. And then it's 20%, 60% up, or 20%, 60% down. Purple is transit. It's interesting how spiky that is. I guess that's Monday through Friday. Probably. Yeah.
Weekends are your transit.
And then
drops.
when transit drops, I guess driving goes up and walking goes up. So red is walking, orange is driving, and you can see driving's gone down in the United States over the past 3 months, 63%, walking 66%, transit 81%. If you do our area, the San Francisco Bay Area, it's even more dramatic, 70% drop for driving, 79% for walking.
No, I think there's actually a difference in how Google and Apple are doing things here too. I mean, we'd have to go look at the Google mobility things to see what they're doing. But Apple was just saying change in routing requests. So that's basically how often are you using maps to find a location to get directions for walking.
Oh, so it's not use, it's searches, it sounds like.
Right. Whereas I think Google's mobility change was based on Google Maps tracking. I mean, it's like where they actually know you are.
That's very different information.
There are two sides to the sword here. On the one hand, Google is in a position to give a lot better data, but it also illustrates how much data Google collects incidentally. There was again, this is something that we're going to have to decide how we feel about it. One of the most potent pieces of data illustration that I saw in the past few weeks was all the kids who decided to still go to spring break in Florida, and the ability to take all kinds of anonymized data and say, okay, well, here's a map of everybody who was in these spring break locations who don't live in the area and where they wound up, overlaid over where coronavirus infections rates are, and it was able to really show that because of this one event, here's how many exposed people were. Here's how broad the reach of these vectors were, and it really spread across every major city east of the Mississippi and a little bit west of it too. So on the one hand, it's like, wow, that really does show how important it is that we really do shelter in place, that we limit contact, we don't travel necessarily, and then like in the other like 19 hours a day that you're stuck at home bored, like, wait a minute, how were they able to get that data and make that map so precise. And it really is because of how much data is being collected just on an incidental basis.
Do you remember the New York Times report from January, December? I can't remember exactly when it came out, where they had someone had leaked them like 3 months of data from a couple of years ago from some of the location tracking companies. And that
wasn't Google or Apple. Those were actually ad trackers. Yeah.
Those were just ad trackers. Yeah. And they could identify celebrities, they could identify security officials, they could identify
But that just shows you, if you make no attempts to anonymize, that this information is incredibly valuable. I'm going to give Google and Apple some credit that they do attempt to anonymize it.
Precisely.
It's not in their interest. They're not saying, hey, how would you like to buy an ad for Arnold Schwarzenegger? They're saying, how would you like to buy an ad for men 25 to 54 in the San Francisco Bay Area? Very different kinds of information. Here's to your point, Adam, here's the Google information. And I think it's just it's not even a matter of whether Google knows more or less. It's just they've sliced it very differently. So for instance, he's retail and recreation, grocery and pharmacy. So they're talking about trends for people going to parks. That's just different ways of looking at the information.
And in their guidance for this, they're saying that this is a tool for community leaders, that if you want to see how well your local rules and your local regulations are working, here is actual data to go by. Because it's the hardest thing in the world, particularly in I don't mean this in a negative way. This is simply yin and yang. There are some parts of the country where individual liberty is considered to be more sacrosanct than in other parts of the country. And again, it's neither good nor bad. It's just that I'm not denigrating anybody in other places, but in those parts of the country, it is so hard to say that I am the governor of your state. I am ordering you to not congregate. I am ordering you to stay inside your homes between these hours, and I'm ordering all of these private businesses to be shut down starting immediately. And the amount of kickback from that over the past couple of months has been amazing. Just an impossible thing for government to deal with. So when you have data that says, we are not simply arbitrarily saying we don't want you to be hanging out in bars. We are saying that here is the graph of how bad you are doing at voluntarily going along with things that we are asking you to do. And here's other data that we're saying that we can see from other communities that are earlier along in the coronavirus timeline, that here's how effective it is to isolate and how bad it is when you don't isolate. So this is why getting this data out there, to giving these data realization tools in the hands of the leaders who have to make a case for here's why we're asking you to do these unusual things, is going to be a critical part of this toolkit.
But even privacy advocates like ProPublica, which has been very vocal, they are making maps available. I mean, everybody's doing this because this is the time when we need to get this information. If I were a Sonoma County supervisor, this is the county we're in Northern California, this information would be very valuable to me to know people are staying home. Actually, this is really encouraging. 43% fewer people going to work. That's fairly encouraging. Even grocery and pharmacies dropped 24%.
Yeah. It's an interesting point with all of this stuff. I mean, this is, again, something I was writing about with our anniversary article, which is that we're in what is being called a state of narrative collapse. Our stories don't make sense anymore. And when our stories don't make sense, we all as individuals reach for the data. Like, we've got to make sense of this again. So
self-soothing behavior.
Right. It's like so. I mean, does this data actually make a difference to us personally? No. But it's still reassuring to us to be able to see.
Well, there is some value to it. If you're staying home, you want to see if everybody's doing it, and you're not just the patsy who fell for it, right? It's good to know, right?
I did go out. I actually drove for the first time in 2 weeks on Saturday as I was going for this hike in the wilderness with my friend, and I was just shocked at the number of people who were out.
I know.
In cars and stuff. I thought it was going to be a ghost town, and no, there was actual traffic.
Yeah.
I joke about living in the Times Square of a 300-year-old quaint New England seaside community, but truly, I'm looking out my window right now, and you can see dog walkers, you can see cars. It's busier in my Times Square than it is in the actual Times Square.
Well, I do have to say that to that point, I've never seen so many people walking, biking, running. Yep. We went on a bike ride last night, and everybody was out because everybody's dying to get out. But the good news is they're wearing masks, they're social distancing, they're doing it safely.
and the other good news is I've got lots of reasons. Obviously, there's lots of reasons to worry about what happens when we can say that this crisis is over with, when we have a vaccine and essentially we can legitimately resume to normalcy. I like the thought that this exceptional period is going to cause a lot of communities and a lot of government to rethink a lot of basic things. We have I'm trying to remember what city it was, but it's actually in Oakland, where because of reduced traffic, they were shutting down a number of streets and making them pedestrian and bike only. Partly because they can do that, and will encourage people to not get sick by staying inside, getting some exercise. But also, it's an interesting experiment, and maybe a year or two from now they'll decide maybe we should now do a lot of what's being done in Europe, which is to shut down certain streets to vehicle traffic and make it pedestrian only, make them bicycle only. And the other thing is that the access of communities to data like what Google is providing can give them a lot more insight into what needs they're not serving in their communities. When they find out that here is broadly speaking how this community is relying on public transportation, and here is how this community is relying on social events, and to be able to see that we basically have a community where people like to congregate in places of free recreation, but we're not giving them ways to get there. Perhaps this is something that we could be addressing in order to strengthen our community.
But then there's this video from the San Francisco police, from the San Francisco Gates Instagram, of a late night club where they had surveillance video of 150 people. This is just last week, going in the party. So there are, maybe I am the pansy. There are people still. The good news is they're all going to get sick and suffer.
There's a story almost every week about somebody who refused to do this and led other people to refuse to do this, dying of coronavirus, literally dying.
Yeah.
So
by the way, the police shut it down. So that's
no. I honestly think that the proper response for the police to this is that as soon as when they see this happening, they basically bring in a couple of heavy loaders, dump tons and tons of sand in front of every single door, and say that, well, you wanted to congregate. Well, guess what? You're all going to be congregating there for 2 weeks until it's safe for us to let you out. We will be airdropping you Twinkies and bottled water to make sure you don't die. But
so then
this is what we have to do.
Other story, which you started to refer to, Andy, of and this is not an app. This is something Google and Apple got together to create an API for that would support down the road the kind of containment that's going to be required once quarantines are lifted and people moving about. What you need to do when that happens, and what has been done, is supposedly being done in China, South Korea, Singapore, is people can move about a little bit more freely. But when somebody is tested positive, you immediately not only quarantine them, but find out everybody who had contact with them over the past few days and quarantine that group as well. You basically do small little containments, and that has worked very well. It requires a few things, though. Most importantly, besides immediate and easy testing, the ability to figure out who saw whom. So Google and Apple have come up with an API. It's kind of interesting the way it works. It's a tracing technology. Now, as I said, it's an API. The idea is not that they would ever implement this. I don't think they want to go near it with a 10-foot pole, but that health officials would create an app that would then be voluntarily, or not so much, I guess Apple thinks it'll be voluntary, downloaded by citizens. The way it's going to work, and I'm going to quote Moxie Marlinspike here, the security researcher who created Signal, Open Whisper Systems. Here's how it works. Once a day, your device, and again, it works on Android and iOS, derives a daily tracing key, a unique key, unique to your device. And then it uses that to derive a new proximity ID every time your device's Bluetooth address changes, which is every 15 minutes. As you walk around, your proximity ID is broadcast, and everybody near you running this app or their Bluetooth sensors will keep track of your proximity. And similarly, you'll keep track of everybody you see. If someone tests positive, they choose, by the way, notice this voluntary part, they choose to publish their previously secret daily tracing keys. So your device frequently downloads all the published daily tracing keys to see if they match somebody you were near. And at that point, you would presumably get an alert saying you were near somebody who's tested positive. You need to quarantine in place.
Yeah.
So that's how it works. Moxie brought up a few issues. It's using Bluetooth LE. He brought up, he said, it seems likely some kind of personally identifiable information would have to be combined so that authorities could say, okay, you need to quarantine. He also points out a couple of potential problems. Keys published by a device have to be published to all devices in the world. That's a major denial of service vector because we're talking potentially 100 megabytes or more of data. If anyone can anonymously blast up keys, in other words, if you could say, hey, I tested positive. Well, actually, first let me say, if anybody can anonymously blast up keys, they can create a situation where there's gigabytes of data for every device in the world to retrieve and compute. That'd be a problem. He also points out there's a prank problem because you could say, I have it, and everybody who we've been exposed to now will be told they've been exposed to COVID without knowing who said he was testing positive because that's protected. Yeah. So there is a kind of problem there. Now, maybe Apple and Google have solutions to that. Here's the biggest issue, and I agree with Moxie. He says there's going to be issues with this, as you pointed out, Andy, with this API and other uses of it, maybe by ad tech. But he's also not super optimistic about opt-in contact tracing because he doesn't think people will opt in. I anticipate someone will end up using this for some other interesting thing, though, he says. So go ahead, Adam. You said Apple has mitigated these two issues?
Yeah, so yesterday Apple and Google had a briefing, and we were writing about it. Glenn Fleischman had done an article for Tidbits about it, and so he was updating the article with all of the details that came out in the briefing. And, obviously it's at the API level right now. So there's nothing
anything's possible, right?
Anything's possible.
Right.
That said, they're fully aware of all this stuff. This is Apple and Google we're talking.
Yeah.
The two most attacked companies in the world. No questions asked. There is no one who was hit more than Apple and Google. And so I have to believe that they're thinking about this in a really big way. One thing is that they did say that they would be producing some kind of model apps because, governments may simply not be able to produce this stuff, even from the API.
There does need to be a reference version.
Right. And so Apple and Google would do this, and then the governments could either just kind of, white label them. Look, it's the U.S. app. Or they could, do it themselves and have their own app that just uses the API. In terms of the pranking, yes, there will have to be some kind of verification that you actually got tested. You don't just get to say, "Oh, I'm positive." That's not good enough, and everyone knows that.
Yeah.
The question about whether the uptake will be there is an open one, and I think the hope is that people can be encouraged to do this because it is for the public good. That if people don't do it, if there's only 2% of the population downloads these apps and uses them, that's when it starts to be more of a question. And
I'm encouraged by the fact that we are all putting ourselves at great discomfort and following the rules. And I think that is pretty widespread agreement.
And if people don't do that, then governments will. That's when the question will be: does this become compulsory? Yeah. Yep. Apple and Google are building it into the OS stacks next.
It could, one of the ways to get people to sign on into opt-in is if in the coming months, if this gets built out properly, to say that okay, we are now saying that we can open up movie theaters, we can open up live venues. However, you are going to be required to tap in and a control. And if your phone can provide a key that says that no, you have not been in contact with anybody, then we will allow you to get in. Otherwise, we're not going to quarantine you, but we're going to say no, you're not allowed to be into this. You're still subject to 6 foot distancing.
I can see that happening. I can see a local government saying to movie theaters, you can open, but everybody who comes has to, somehow identify themselves. So should somebody who was there test positive, we can notify them all. I could see that happening. No, the movie theater is going to love that, to say, oh, do I get their email addresses?
Anything to it, yeah. Well, no, I think that you're in a good bargaining position when your opening gambit is, do you want your theater to be in business, to close permanently, or do you want to actually make money?
Drugstore or coffee shop, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, though, if you want to open for business May 1st, June 1st, even July 1st, that's a lot of infrastructure to put in place in a couple of months.
Can you imagine the insurance liability too?
Yeah. Like what?
Well, I mean, like if people get sick in your establishment because you opened without, everything being in place or against somebody's recommendation.
This is where government comes in. It's possible for lobbyists to carve out exemptions, just like the gun industry can't be sued for liability when their products are used in a crime. But if they said that your business is not under liability for coronavirus infections if you observe these rules that we're giving you to observe.
Right.
Actually, the more specific one would be how the government has a fund for people who are hurt by vaccines. That you can't sue pharmaceutical companies for any problems caused by a vaccine, and that's again,
it's a public health. It's a public health issue. Yeah,
public health issue.
Yeah.
So,
it's if it weren't so deadly, it would be fascinating. If this would be a great sci-fi novel, because
it's going to be.
That's the weird thing. It's not deadly. Like if it was Ebola or Lassa or one of those things, it would have killed itself out almost immediately. Yeah. And if it was less of a problem, like if nobody really died from it, it'd be like the flu. It wouldn't really. It's like it's just tedious enough,
just deadly enough
to really screw us over.
Just deadly enough.
And to be fair, what do we lose? Like 60,000 people a year from the flu,
right?
In the U.S. alone, on a bad year. I mean, it varies quite a lot by the year, but 60,000 people can die a year from the flu. So this is not, in some ways.
Well, no. It's every time that comes up, we have to address that and say that the difference is that people get the flu, they get sick almost immediately. They go to bed and then they're pretty much done with it. The difference between this is that you're carrying it, you're spreading virus for 2 or 3 weeks before you even know that you're sick. The other problem being that it is way, way, way more fatal than any flu we've seen before.
There is a flu vaccine, so there is a mitigation that you can pursue for the flu. We're stuck. There is no mitigation. There's no treatment and there's no vaccine. So,
but again, and I don't want to minimize what Andy said, but I do think that we get accustomed to things.
No, I agree. More people get killed in car accidents. Although
7,000 people in car accidents.
I think we might hit that number in a few weeks. It's growing pretty fast.
So I think it's just important.
And the car doesn't turn around and come back at you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
the fact that I'm a bad driver, I can kill maybe 2-3 people. If I'm a jerk who decides, hey, I'm going to spring break, I can kill dozens and dozens, and mostly people that I love and that I know, people I've been in contact with. So.
Frederick Filou, writing in the Monday Note, says, and I think maybe it's worthy of conversation, it's time to put aside some privacy principles temporarily and with numerous guarantees to alleviate lockdowns and try to restart the economy. But the widespread lack of confidence toward political leadership and big tech will not help. This is an opportunity for both government and big tech to burnish their image a little bit. By doing this intelligently, correctly, and with some regard to the long-term privacy issues, I would think.
One thing that I've been, again, maybe it's a little bit Pollyanna-ish, but we have been in a major bad space with privacy for some years now. That New York Times article that showed the location tracking, that was, the very definition of chilling. And what's happened after that article? Diddly squat. They go and reveal that everyone surrounding the president can be tracked instantly, in real time by these companies, and nothing happens. And so maybe, just maybe, fingers crossed, knock on wood, this will actually allow these conversations to start and result in some legislation that says, we know this is happening already. It's already a privacy nightmare out there. Maybe we can get some legislation to allow some of this stuff to continue in a real way while getting and dealing with the abuses of it at the same time.
This would be a good time to
Remember there was those articles over and over again about the cell phone companies selling our location to bounty hunters and debt collectors, and then they swore they'd stop doing it, then they did it again, and then they were Vice caught them doing it a third time.
No, that's a really good point, Adam. This is an opportunity to both fix that ill and to do something about COVID and go forward in a way that's much more positive. Apple says that starting in mid-May, so exactly a month from now, the iPhones will start getting these new APIs, and then later in the year, iOS and Android will receive updates to let you opt into contact tracing without installing an app. So there will be.
Like Android is going back further than iOS. Like Apple's only doing the latest iOS, and Android's going back several versions.
Because the way that Google is doing it is that they're making it an update that goes through the Google Play Store, through the App Store. So basically, any phone that is 4 or 5 years old has access to the Google Play Store.
It sounds like it'll do it silently, right? It'll just put it on your phone.
Yeah, they have a bunch of like hunks of the operating system that are updated through Google Play, and assuming it would be like through one of those big hunks.
So next month, you'll be able to download an app that's for your region that will do all this. Apple will release a software update that will make this API function in the designated app. Is there anybody here who would not install that app?
I'll install it day one.
I'll install it.
We all will. It's funny because on Sunday we talked about this, and Georgia Dow and Owen, right? Am I wrong, Renee? They said absolutely no way.
Agree. My mind agrees with them. My heart is terrified. That's where like I'm in one of those, it's like using Facebook or Zoom. It's like in a perfect world I would never ever do it, but the world we're in is so far from perfect that I'm a person divided against myself.
I think something that you constantly reflect upon in adulthood is that you stand by your principles, but principles is a plural. You have many principles, and sometimes they're in direct conflict with each other.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, I've been talking about this with other people as well, is that, we all have the meter, the privacy meter. And, kind of as Andy says, you change your actions based on that, but only very occasionally are you forced into a situation where you have to make a decision that reveals your true spot on the privacy meter. And I don't want to imply this is, complete privacy is the best and no privacy is the worst. There's no right or wrong necessarily, and it's even cultural. I mean, one of the reasons why the Asian countries have done better in some of these is that in Asian cultures there's more of a support of the group.
A collective mentality,
And that's something
we're
the
individuals,
US
but we're learning. I think
in Europe.
This is a very interesting moment in American history because we have been really individual, and now I think there's a more collective mentality because of this. Not a bad thing.
Right, and
individuals
I'm
in
a systems guy.
Yeah.
I like putting systems together, and I've discovered that sort of as I think about these things, I'm certainly again utterly freaked out by all the location stuff the ad tracking companies have done. But when I see that there's a real utility to this, my privacy meter moves over towards the public health side.
Yeah.
That I'm like, yep, do the contact tracing. We need the contact tracing.
I've been very heartened by how. And maybe it's just because I'm in a small suburban town or ex-urban town, but people really are pitching in, and they're waving at each other, and they're making dinner for each other. They're donating. They're making a point of ordering food if they can afford it, takeout from their favorite restaurant to keep them in business. If they can't, neighbors are pitching in. There's food banks, and I mean it's remarkable, and it's very heartwarming to see it. And sometimes it does take something like this to get people back together again.
It's not even this, like, because we're so strange. Like, I remember years ago, I had this conversation in my head where my brain's like, I will never use Google Mail because I object on principle that they are scanning all the emails coming in. And they're like, but it's so good.
Right.
It's like those. It's so good. It's so
good.
much better. The spammer is so much better. The thing, and like you keep making these sort of, like, you have actual conversations in your own head about these things.
All right.
Yeah. Whenever I go, I'm sorry, I'll end this. But whenever I go into the public library and I see people who are using the public computers because they don't have computers, or they don't have internet access, or they don't have homes, like, they're not signing into Microsoft Outlook. They're signing into Gmail to find out if they got the job or if they got those benefits, or if they're in touch with people. So, like I said, multiple principles sometimes competing in your head for security.
Speaking of which, I don't know how this works with the vast number of people who don't have smartphones or don't have Bluetooth LE on their phones, or, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you have an Oyster card that governments distribute or something like that. I don't know.
I think that falls into we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah.
That, I mean, what I'm actually most happy about is that Apple and Google are stepping up to do things that only Apple and Google can do.
Yep.
I mean, there's been all these great announcements. We're giving $15 million to that. We're donating 100 million masks, whatever. Great stuff. Don't get me wrong, but that requires writing a check.
Right.
That's
an
it.
easy thing to do.
Any company could write a check.
Yeah.
I want to see Apple and Google and the companies like that doing the things that only they can do.
Well, and I think they are.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think, honestly, we would be up a creek if this had happened pre-internet.
Oh,
yeah.
Just imagine.
Movies feeding on each other in the streets.
Yeah, it's not just being able to create a tracking app. It's having Netflix so you don't go crazy.
Being able to do this.
Yeah, or do what we're doing. This has not in any way changed how we do our shows.
No.
No. I mean, again, we think back 30 years to the beginning of Tidbits. Just go back through some of those histories. Like, could we have done it 30 years ago? No, that would have been terrible. 20 years ago? No.
Unless you want a postage stamp sized Parker Posey movie, you're going to be...
and it was only Parker Posey who could do it. We'd all be watching Parker Posey.
All right, here's an uplifting story. You can now buy a Mac Pro on the Apple Outlet refurbed.
You can save the price of a MacBook Air on your Mac Pro.
It's not even that much, is it? Well, I guess it is.
Oh, man, look at that. Cheap.
Here is a refurbished
like
Mac Pro,
off, right?
8-core Intel Xeon W, Radeon Pro, just one GPU. Sorry, kids. $5,689. So that's what? That's almost $400 less than it cost new. How high can we go, though? Let's go. Let's see what the most expensive. And you got to wonder, where did this refurb come from? Like,
I think what we're seeing is every journalist and YouTube blogger who bought one so they could do a video about
Marquez Brownlee's.
and returned it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
No, he has a whole closet full of them, I bet. But it's like probably every other.
He did. When he was on Twitter, he said, "Well, all the editors have to have one. I think I have 4 or 5." He
showed his closet when he was moving his studio, and he had a closet full of Reds. And I just you have a Marquez worth of Reds.
It's
That's a collective noun now.
Marquez, what day is trash day in your neighborhood? I want to be there at 3 a.m. with a bucket.
But you're right. These are and these also would be probably not a few of them would be people who had buyer's remorse. They got the box and they went, oh crap, I can't afford this, and they sent them right back. $10,449. Oh, here's the most expensive one. This is one with an afterburner. You're going to love this. Now, how much would you pay? It's like cost of a small car. 3.2 gigahertz, 16-core, 2 Radeons, an Apple afterburner, a mere $22,439.
Some of them might have also had small issues at launch, because that sometimes happens, and they got brought back, and Apple swapped them out, and then they fixed them up and refurbed them.
I mean, this only has 192 gigs of RAM. Come on.
How many kilometers, Leo? How many kilometers are on
8 terabytes.
I need to run Chrome on this thing, for God's sake.
So we have a review coming up on Hands on Technology. We finally found somebody who bought one of these. And was
it Lindsay?
It's your neighbor Ray Maxwell in Vancouver.
Oh, nice.
Ray used to be on the show I did up there, Lab with Leo. He was on 40 times. We did a show with him in the early days of Twit called Maxwell's House that was all about science and flying and math. He's a drone pilot. He uses it to edit the 6K and 8K videos he gets from his drone shots. He bought a very nice machine. In fact, he bought it with a 32 terabyte RAID array internal.
That's amazing.
And actually, because of that, he came up with one of the first flaws in the Mac Pro, which was that the fans weren't keeping it cool enough, so it shut down within a day. Called Apple. Apple, I think probably if you spend, I don't know what, 20, 30,000 on a computer, gives you pretty good support.
You get a person.
He said that's exactly right. You get the Mac Pro person. And they pushed out an update to the fans that made it work. He also had a problem with his USB ports after 10. What's the most recent one? 10, 15, 14? I don't know. 4.
10, 15, 4 supplemental.
10, 15, 4. Well, that's the thing. The day after he reported this problem with the USB ports, supplemental came out and magically fixed it. So so I think there are at least a couple of Ray Maxwell fixes. He tells the story. It's going to be a fun hands-on tech, a little longer than usual.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, he also reviewed the XDR display because he's a color scientist, and so he really understands. We found somebody who's the perfect guy to review this stuff. Alex Lindsay can't even afford one. This is
well, he couldn't a few weeks ago. Now
maybe now that he's gotten a lot of business. Companies that want to do their conferences online.
He's using one for every Zoom now.
Yeah. Anyway,
I thought he did a great job on the Queen's message. I thought that wasn't that clutch beautiful performance.
But
I just
honestly, he denies it. But I think
I know Alex didn't do it. You know how I know? They let her wear a green dress. Alex would never. Never have let her wear a green dress. Your Majesty, can I suggest another color?
Something
you're going to be wearing a West Ham United football jersey tomorrow.
Paisley,
I guarantee it.
Perhaps.
But Alex did post his Zoom setup yesterday, and it had like giant lights and giant computers and 8 lights, and it was just it was like Tony Stark's Zoom setup.
I have to say, even our humble setup here is far superior to anything I'm seeing, even from the major networks, as now they have everybody streaming from home. It's like, what is going on, you guys?
It's so weird.
Get a better microphone, for crying out loud.
And they adjust the phone. Like they reach up and they adjust the phone while they're doing their talk show. It's the most. Yeah.
I was watching MSNBC last night, and they were interviewing somebody, and her iPhone went off. And you could see her kind of consternation, and she kept talking, but she kind of had to turn it off.
We're all that reporter with the kid behind us now, Leo. That used to be the funny video we watched. Now we're all that reporter.
Absolutely. Actually, there's a very funny. I'll see if I can find it quickly enough. There's a Reddit post I showed on iOS today on maybe.
You're Andy, and then Crane Can 2000 just gets in your shot. It's just
this was a professor who was teaching a class. Let me show you this. He was teaching a class on Zoom, and his son decided, because the professor apparently couldn't see. He was, sharing his screen, so his son decided to Zoom bomb it. He had many different costumes.
That is the best.
I wouldn't pull the tiger's tail when I'm quarantined with the tiger. You want to be able to run away.
If you keep watching, the tiger will get his revenge in a moment. I have a friend whose husband is a professor at Cornell, and Cornell had 2 weeks off and then spring break, and they just started classes again a week ago, and I'd talked to her beforehand, and I said, "Oh, how are you doing?" And she's like, "Well, it was fine. It was just the kids before, but sorry."
Get him.
It's like my husband. Now the problem is my husband, because he's a lecturer. He lectures.
He's used to having 100 people wrapped watching him nodding along, and now he's got to talk to a wall.
He's still got the same tone of voice, and she's in the same small apartment.
Oh no! Oh no! He's talking like this. He's declaiming,
and he's a math professor. So,
oh geez, how does he do it without the sliding blackboards? I don't know how you would do that.
I got this amazing message yesterday from the University of Albany saying that my Apple versus FBI video was used on their online cybersecurity class.
Oh, good.
They had to watch it and then decide whether Apple or the FBI was right or wrong.
Oh, that's cool.
Which terrified me, Leo. It makes you really think before you put words up on the internet.
Well, that's right. It means the words were the right words. If you go to Walgreens drive-thru and use your physical Apple card, 3% cash back. Thank you, Apple. That's a little thing.
They should give you more for using contactless now. Like, you should be rewarded for not touching things.
I went to Lucky. I'm not going back, but a couple of weeks ago we had to have food. And fortunately, they have a plexiglass between you and the checker and everything. And then they wanted the money, and I was so happy I could just tip.
Yep.
So I don't know if you guys have covered this before, but my managing editor, Josh Centers, is in kind of rural Tennessee, and he's very happy because Tractor Supply, which has been one of the Apple Pay holdouts, just started supporting it because of this.
Wow. Thank God, Tractor Supply. By the way, we should be clear. It's not just tractors.
No.
You can get combine harvesters. You can get bulldozers. Chickens. Chickens and chicken feed.
Chicken feed. Yep. It's actually, I have to say, I have a tractor, so
we have a TSC. We have a TSC down the road.
I think I mentioned this before, but there was a concept video about like Walmarts in the future where it would be all based in driving because COVID would mean nobody gets out of their cars. And the guy's going through his driving and he's getting these groceries by robot put in his car. And then he gets to the end, has to get out and hand somebody his credit card. And I was thinking, even in the dystopian future, Walmart still won't take
Still won't take it. Damn you, Walmart.
The very definition of A for effort.
I think, we're not getting a lot of information about China. China's claiming it's better and things are going well. But there is one data point that might support that. According to Reuters, Apple's iPhone shipments in China were up 500% last month.
Yeah.
Up from the bottom when nobody was buying anything. But they shipped 2.5 million iPhones in China last month. Mobile phone shipments overall, 21 million. So I guess people in China came out of their houses and bought phones.
They went outside, they blinked at the sun, and they're like, "Oh, this is what outside is like." I need an iPhone, and they went to the Apple store.
I need a phone. So the stores are reopening. In fact, that's the only place you can go to an Apple store is in China. It's good to look ahead and see that maybe there's a light at the end of this tunnel, and save some money because you're going to need to buy a phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought maybe today would be the iPhone SE. Have you seen anything?
Today's OnePlus Day, Leo.
Yeah,
Apple's not going to share a news cycle.
The 8 comes out today, doesn't it?
Yeah. Apple wants to come right after. Like they always wait till somebody launches and then they come afterwards, so that person ends up being B-roll. That's just the strategy.
I'm kicking.
If you're on the same day or earlier, then you become the B-roll.
I'm kicking myself.
Malibu Stacy has a new hat.
We probably should have done the OnePlus event. I didn't think of that. 120 hertz display. They're very good at that kind of thing. 48 megapixel. 48 megapixel
and it's really
camera.
120 hertz. Like you don't have to lower the resolution to get the 120 hertz. It is variable, so it can dynamically shift based on the content. But it's like a grown-up 120 hertz now.
Not cheap, $1,000. I wonder if
for the Pro, yeah.
Yeah. If I could buy one right now. I think, I don't know, but I would guess that somebody around here probably has one.
And it's got wireless charge. Well, the embargo lifted this morning. It's got wireless charging.
Then Jason has one.
Okay.
And we did a hands-on tech review, and you'll see it tonight on All About Android.
The videos went live, I forget when, like 11 a.m. Suddenly my entire YouTube feed was OnePlus 8.
Boom, boom, boom. The OnePlus 8. So, honestly, I'm really reluctant to buy an Android phone these days. If I were going to buy one, this is the one. I think they're much better than the Pixel phones. The Oxygen OS, the version of Android that OnePlus puts on there is very pure, very close to the original. The hardware is easily better.
It's got wireless charging now.
Yeah, which they didn't have before. I love the OnePlus 7.
An IP rating on the carrier versions, although I think the non-carrier versions are identical. They just didn't bother to rate them.
So that's waterproof to what? How high? What should I get?
Black, 8 level?
Black, green, or ultramarine? Ooh.
The blue looked matte. The blue looked nice and matte, but I don't know.
Yeah, Marquez had the ultramarine's pretty cool.
Is it? Nice. That's kind of bluey. 12 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs storage, $1,000. That's it. It's a
OnePlus for $1,000. It's going to take my brain a little while to adapt to this new wonderful.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the things that was so great.
Wait, one of those. Yeah, the green one's 8.
Yeah, it's $8.99. That's the cheap one. 8 gigs of RAM, 20 gigs storage.
You start off being the rebel. You end up being the self-appointed king.
Yeah,
you end up being your parents.
You know what? We are successful now. We should make our own ceramic-based translucent aluminum screen.
Oh, thank God! I can't buy it for 19 hours, 43 minutes, and 3 seconds. Oh, what
You're
a relief.
safe.
Oh, thank God. I almost fell for it.
They should take pre-orders. They should take your money whenever you are willing to give it to them. It's not the best economy right now, OnePlus. If Leo wants to give you the money now and you send it to him later, take Leo's money.
Yeah. Well, I'll take a look at Jason's before I make up my mind.
See, classic mistake. Could have had you.
Apple's not threatened by these upstarts in any way, right? Andy, you still use an Android phone, though, right?
I still use a Pixel because I like the pure Android experience. I really like the camera, and I just like it. I think it's really good. I will say though that there were specific reasons why I switched from my iPhone to an Android phone 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and a lot of those are really not operative now. So the fact that I still own a Pixel 1, and a Pixel 1 is still my daily driver, believe it or not. And so I'm really, year after year, I'm thinking that if I want to buy myself a new phone, I can. And year after year, it's like, ooh, the new iPhone 11 looks really, really good. And
we'll get you back. We'll get you back.
And unfortunately, I get to borrow one for like a couple of months, and it's like, ooh, I really do. It's actually not as expensive as it used to be. Like, oh, do you mean that we're going to get like time of flight on the new? Oh, interesting.
I have to say that the camera in this, it continues to blow me away. I've never
really good this year.
I take pictures of this thing and I go, that's as good as my much more expensive cameras. I don't know why I even carry those.
Well, across the board, I still carry my like $2,000 worth of like Olympus lens and body. But now I used to have like my B camera would be like a nice like pocket camera with a Sony sensor for when like I just need to take a quick grab, or if I have like the really big telephoto and I needed to get something close. And now it's like, no, I can leave that at home and leave those battery chargers at home, because I really think that anything that I would want to shoot at close up will be as good, if not better, on the phone, particularly because the phone is making much better choices than I am in the heat of the moment.
This is a picture I took of downtown Petaluma of Lisa playing Pokemon Go. You'll be happy to know, Renee. Completely unopposed.
Nice. She's taken all the gems.
Yeah, but I mean, I just think the color, the detail, the sense of space. And
there's stuff like I can still get really good video off a fancy camera, but like where the iPhone is so great, and even some of the other modern phones now, is you're walking and the lighting and the white balance and everything is changing, and a traditional camera still doesn't have a processor to recalculate that fast enough, and so you get like it's yellow and then it's blue and then it's dark and then it's bright, and like the iPhone, the video, it just sometimes you can't tell that you actually walked through those areas and were bouncing up and down for a while you did it.
Yeah. And having the super wide, this was the extra wide, it's just really nice to have that capability.
I mean, Renee has helped to really inspire me to try to every couple of years I try to learn how to do video, and it's always an abject failure because I can't find a really I can't get into the groove of it. But Renee inspired me to try it again, and the first step was, well, let's get everything I've got in the office that can like shoot video. Again, including like this camera body that I spent $1,400 for, attached to an $800 lens. And like, you know what? It's the iPhone is actually doing a much better job.
I know, it's depressing.
It's like, damn. It's okay because I didn't buy. It's not like I spent like $5,000 for a Red, and now I need to learn how to use it properly because out of the box it doesn't do good. But it's like, damn.
I know.
Why Andy, you're overthinking this.
I know.
Oh, come on, Andy. You don't want to just use the built-in webcam in a MacBook Air?
Oh my God.
So this is ridiculous. So I started using this. This is a C500.
That's
and I was
specifically for shooting video. That's their cinema camera.
Yeah, I mean, and it's ginormous. It's like a ginormous camera, but I had to do it fast, and so I ended up using my iPhone for.
And it was probably, at least for YouTube,
everything but depth of field.
Right.
It is amazing for everything but depth of field.
Right, and that's because the sensor is very small.
And some low light, like low light is still harder on video because like it's doing so much more work. Right. It can't run everything that it can run on a still photo. So you do see the noise on the low light.
What you're really seeing is the effect of in a still stacking all the stuff they're doing behind the scenes of taking multiple images. You're seeing how much computational photography goes into a still, which you just can't put into a video.
And it's why some people say, well, how come Canon doesn't do that? And like, well, they don't have the silicon.
Yeah.
Plus, try to do a 4K feed at 60 frames per second and doing all that. Yeah. It's non-trivial.
So, by the way, Andy, the Pixel 4a, I'm sure is going to be out any minute now. We keep seeing these leaks and everything. That will be a low-priced version of the Pixel that probably will be worth your money.
Yeah, I still have the Pixel 4 on loan. I'm not because of personal ethics, I'm not allowed to put my own SIM card in it. I love how they're moving things forward. I love that they have this motion sensor based on Soli. But it's like if the motion sensor, if this were on an Apple product, within 3 months, every single app would not only support like next track, previous track, but there'd be the one that changed the volume, like switch cameras up and down instead of
my banking app just got Face ID support on my Pixel. Like it took forever.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that's another reason why I couldn't write about my Pixel experience because. Again, it's like I part of it is as we all know, like at some point you have to put your own SIM in it and use it as your daily driver. And I was not willing to give up biometric authentication for my banking app and for PayPal and for 1Password. Yeah. And it took months for all of that to click in.
So when do you think the SE, they're not doing it today because of the 8, although honestly, they could have.
Yeah,
I think they don't would have hurt OnePlus a lot more than would have hurt Apple.
I tried to explain it because like a lot of people were saying that they would do it to screw with OnePlus. My thing is like they're the rich cousin. They show up to your house when they show up to your house. They don't care what other cousin is there. Right. They don't care what your plans are. They're not being mean. They just don't even think.
So what's holding it up? I mean, normally they do it on a Tuesday, right?
Prosser said it was Wednesday. Like in his he's been saying that for I think 6 weeks. John Prosser that the date was
tomorrow.
I think tomorrow. Yeah, so we'll have to wait to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 15th. I mean, everything is up in the air because of COVID. I mean, it's not a normal release cycle by any means.
And they have to do it after MacBreak. There's no way they'd do it before MacBreak so we could talk about it.
Sons of guns. So
worst is when they do it on Mondays when I have to cover the damn thing, and trying to get the issue out.
While you're typing, they release it.
Yeah. Monday afternoon is what really gets us.
They dub keynote at him every year.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it happens to us. I don't know why, but I guess because of close of market or something. But almost all, like Microsoft always does stuff after Windows Weekly. Apple always stuff after MacBreak Weekly. And I think it has more to do with.
And if you move the show, they move too. It's really weird.
That's what's weird. That's
Selection
the thing
bias,
that baffles
I think
me.
that's
I don't think they're paying attention. I have to say, the reason I think Android is superior in one regard, and it's the Springboard on Apple. The user interface is
weak.
so awful. Just moving an icon, the jiggle.
Yeah.
It falls into this pit of another folder, and I can't get it out. It drives me insane. It's just.
I did a whole video on it last week about I go through it step by step, saying I want them to give me the option to have the search bar there. Then I want to have complications like Apple Watch.
Yes.
Then I want to have some Siri suggested apps. Then I want to dock. And then at the end of the video, I say,
it's
if
Android.
you just swipe to the left, that's what. No, but it's also for 5 years, Apple has had this -1 home screen where you can just swipe to the left, and they do this really intelligent assortment of widgets and it's like they're too timid to make that the home screen. It's like they've been beta testing that for 5 years. It works really good.
I understand. And now, of course, they do make it the home screen on the iPad, on iPad OS. But I understand that they want to segregate the widgets because I know they look at an Android and go, that is so ugly. He's got the weather and a clock on his homepage.
No, but they're pretty. They are pretty. But so HTC said a while back, like HTC published their usage statistics, and there is a bunch of nerds who just love them and use them all the time. But the vast majority of people never use them and never change them. And they're ornamental. They just look super cool having those giant weather things on your home screen. So it's like, it's not a utility thing, but it makes people feel like and you can turn them off, but it makes people feel like there's some action going on there.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things that I keep going on about is that the thing that makes a phone perfect is getting right all the features that 90% of the people are going to use and appreciate, but also there are all kinds of features that 5% of the users are going to love, but it's a different 5% for each feature. So I don't,
Photoshop.
I don't, yeah, well, exactly. I don't use, my life is not all about widgets, but the first thing I do when I set up a new Android phone is I want to set up my weather widget because that's one of the things I want to be able to see when I light up, and I would miss it if it were gone.
Well, and it irks me that I have to keep clock and calendar on my front page just so I can know what time it is and what the date is. It's ridiculous. I mean, come on.
Well, and of course, now that Apple's bought Dark Sky, weather is going to be front and center in the whole thing.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it'll be
hyper-localized.
The whole screen is going to be the weather behind it. So
that's the rumor, right, that iOS 14 is going to finally add some sort of widgeting and complications.
Kind of. I think some people said no.
Oh, really? That was just a test thing? Oh, that will be disappointing.
They were supposed to do it they were supposed to do it a couple of years ago, and it got pushed back because they did that big maintenance thing. And when you talk to people, it's like, well, we rewrite Springboard every year, and it's like, no, you mean you it's like the Golden Gate Bridge. You start painting it at the beginning of every year, and you finish painting it at the end of the year. Yeah. But it's not being reimagined like an experience point of view.
But having said all that, I still am, finally just kind of, I have a Pixel 4, but I finally just said, the iPhone really, from a point of view of privacy and security, I just can't use. I'm worried about Android these days, and I just know I'm safe in an iPhone. So, I'll put up with Springboard. I just put up with.
I'm super happy we have a bunch of phones that are all like there are phones from so many vendors now that I can recommend, and that wasn't always the case.
Yeah,
it's like you have to compromise on the video, you have to compromise on the camera, you have to compromise on this or that. And now I feel like if someone doesn't like an iPhone, there's like 3 or 4 really good options I can give them, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah. Apple has the highest share of U.S. activation since 2016, so I don't think I'm alone. It is, it always was kind of 50-50 iOS, Android. It's not looking that much like that anymore. I don't know. Well,
that's in the U.S. and it's hard to get these numbers right because it is also technically true that I think that Android just passed a certain milestone where it is now the most widely installed operating system, point blank,
everywhere.
But and so that's if you're an Android weenie. Oh, see, that's right. We will soon grind the iPhone beneath the wheels of our justice.
No,
and it's like, well, no, that also includes like embedded Android devices. That also includes really, really terrible phones that no one should be using in blister packs. So,
and I should point out that even though it's the highest share since 2016, it's only 44%. So they're just fighting over this.
It's weird because like some analytics companies always make it iOS versus Android, even though there's only one iOS vendor and there's multiple Android vendors. And then some say it's iPhone versus Samsung, and they ignore the reality of there being multiple Android vendors. So it's very hard to do an apples to Android comparison.
Yeah, that's true. It's not fair. Yep. It's just not fair. So Apple has fixed with that supplement. Now, I've also heard problems with the supplement. Am I right?
Yeah. We've been there haven't been widespread problems, but they've been kind of ugly.
Yeah, like your whole machine won't boot.
Like it bricks the machine.
Yeah.
And so we've been following a few of these, and my guess at this point is the problems are not really problems. They're things happening with the Bridge OS on the T2 chips, such that when the update takes a while to install, and when it has to redo the Bridge OS, the machine just goes black and just sits there. And it can be a while. And there's no progress, no feedback. You have no idea what's going on. And it doesn't take much to interrupt. If you interrupt that, bad things happen.
Yeah.
So that's one class of them. Another friend of mine.
So in other words, be patient.
Yeah. Be patient. Yeah. Do not stop this install.
Right.
Let it go hours if it has to.
Okay.
Do not stop it.
Okay.
Because you're not going to do anything good by stopping it.
Right.
So, and then another friend of mine had an interesting problem where it installed and then like put him through like first start scenario where it wanted to make a new account and everything. And all his data was there. I mean, because he canceled out of this. He didn't want to make a new admin account and all that. He was afraid he was going to lose his data. He canceled out and checked, and the data was all there. And he made a backup and ended up letting it go, and it worked in the end. But it was an odd situation. So it's just so weird when it's a supplemental update which fixes like 4 bugs, and it doesn't even get its own version number, and yet causes some of these problems. who knows?
Well, so I would say you should do it. Or should you wait?
The bigs are so specific that you'll know.
Wait. You could reasonably
wait. I mean,
wait. Yeah.
The big one is the FaceTime backward compatibility issue. So if you're not talking with anyone who's using iOS 9 or earlier, that kind of stuff,
right?
Yeah, just let it sit. Yeah. It's not fixing very much for most people. So I think you can just look at that list and say, I'm not Ray Maxwell. I'm going to hold on this.
Yeah, he was having trouble with his USB-C port. He had to reset the SMC, and that fixed it. But then the update came out the next day.
And we always have to remember there's the population problem. You have enough people doing something, problems are going to happen in that population that coincide with these installs and are completely unrelated.
That's what happens to Windows. At least that's what they say.
Every time they say it.
Every time. Our show today brought to you from the LastPass studios. And, of course, our sponsor is LastPass. As you're preparing your remote workforce, boss, you got to keep security top of mind. And yet, you can't cut into employee productivity. That's why I love LastPass. Transitioning to a full work-from-home environment, I think you already know, can be very complicated. But LastPass will help you make it easier without decreasing security. For one thing, we're already seeing a massive uptick in coronavirus-related phishing attacks. LastPass reduces the risk of phishing schemes because it doesn't auto-fill passwords on suspicious websites. And in most cases, your employees don't even know the password, so they can't end around it and say, well, I'll type that in. For remote employees accessing your corporate VPN, LastPass adds an additional layer of security directly to your VPN through biometric multi-factor authentication. More than just fingerprint or Face ID, it actually can look at IP addresses, geolocation information to really make sure that that employee is the right person to be accessing your corporate network. Regardless of where or how your employees need access, LastPass ensures your employees have secure access to their work applications. Single sign-on, which I love. There's over 1,200 single sign-on apps that work with LastPass. That means you don't even have to worry about a password. You just say yes on your phone and you're in. Password management, of course, is second to none. LastPass generates long, strong passwords and then keeps track of them. They're never decrypted anywhere but on your device. LastPass doesn't have the keys. They don't have any way of decrypting it, so your privacy is guaranteed. And they even offer an offline mode, both for password management and multi-factor authentication. So your employees gain access no matter where they are. And a lot of times employees are going home to some Wi-Fi that may be a little spottier than what they're used to at work. So it's nice to have that offline mode. Seamless collaboration. That's absolutely true of LastPass. In fact, we have it set up so that there's folders for ops, engineering, bookkeeping, marketing, and each of them gets a separate set of passwords. It's great for onboarding. A new employee we just give them access to the folder, and suddenly they have access to all the resources they need. Same thing when they're working remotely. It also is very easy for remote employees to share passwords across teams. There's a very nice admin interface. You have over 100 policies you can enforce. We, for instance, say you have to use two-factor. You have to. That's just part of the deal. We also have minimum requirements for the master password. Make sure our employees are doing the right thing. And LastPass has a globally dispersed, ready-to-respond support and success team. And yes, they are online right now. They're working right now to help you with an efficient LastPass deployment. If you have any questions, if you want any advice or support getting your employees out into the field, LastPass is there for you. With LastPass, your IT team is in complete control over who accesses what, no matter where they're working, and you get complete visibility over access and authentication. There is no better way. That's why we use LastPass, and we have for years at TWiT. I've used LastPass personally for more than a decade. It is so nice to know that I have somewhere I can trust. I can put my, even not just passwords, but passports and driver's licenses and social security numbers. It's my secure enclave for everything I do on every device I use. Start your journey today by visiting lastpass.com/twit. Find out how they can help you. You better believe when I got that new MacBook Air, the very first thing I do is put LastPass on it. Then I can put everything else on it. LastPass.com/twit. LastPass, thank you for your support. Let's see. I did finally get the MacBook Air 2020, by the way. I got it yesterday.
Nice.
The keyboard is much improved, usable.
Yes. Sweet.
It's not as noisy.
Yeah, it doesn't stub my fingers when I try to type. What else? You put out your 1 month review on this is actually on iMore because you still do stuff for them. What's your general take on it? You happy with it? Is it your full-time MacBook or what?
No. I mean, like, if I didn't have to do video, I would be very, very happy with it. It's so light. Like, traditionally, I was happy with it because I could travel everywhere, coffee shops, briefings, all those things, and it was so light and so easy. And now it's like I can take it from the sofa to the bedroom to the desk, and it's so like this is how I've adapted. But I need to use Final Cut, and I was actually really surprised because I still call them Core M because I don't like Intel rebranding them as big boy chips. But I was surprised because the first generation, the ones in the 15, the first 12-inch, they would choke on 4K really, really hard. And I don't believe that, like, this is not a pro computer. Nobody should assume that this is a way to get a pro computer for, like, in a light, cheap body. And I think a lot of people, especially early on, made that mistake and got upset that it wouldn't do like 8K Final Cut Pro without ramping down the processor. So it can do it. It can do 4K video, but it takes like 2.5 times longer to export than my MacBook Pro does, and that's not a good use case for me. But if you aren't doing anything like heavy pro work, it's really good. I recorded all from 2015 to 2020, all the different keyboard generations and what they sounded like, all the different cameras and what they look like, because the camera's still, for a company that makes the iPhone camera, the Mac cameras are just not in an acceptable place. And I got Ian Cuttress from Adantech to actually explain to YouTube what thermal ramping is and what thermal ramping isn't, and what the expectation is for these class of chipsets. So if you are looking for a Mac that is like, if you don't like iPads, you want an actual Mac, but you want it to be super portable, to do all sorts of mainstream computing things, not pro things, it fixes everything that was wrong about the 2018 version and makes it like that really fabulous 2011 version that most of us love.
I'm very happy with it. I got that i7. I got the 16 gigs of RAM and a terabyte hard drive. So it was $2,000, which I'm not happy about. But I've always loved the MacBook Air. It's always been, I think
redefined laptops.
My favorite Mac, yeah. And, and I have an iMac Pro if I need to do video editing. I don't need it. In fact, what I did, because Anthony Nielsen, who does a lot of is like our, artsy editor. He does a lot of our fancy editing and graphics and so forth. His MacBook Pro that we bought him last year died. So I said, look, take my i9, the 16-inch, because I'm just going to use this MacBook Air because I don't need all that horsepower. And I think trading horsepower for thin and light, for me, was a perfectly sensible thing to do. It's really a nice package. It's a very comfortable, easy to use.
And because it's got those chips are really good at quick ramp up, so it doesn't feel slow. Like those apps launch fast.
Not at all.
If you try to do like a quick count, like it feels snappy, which is really nice.
It's
for those
not
chips.
the fast i7. It's a mobile, low power i7.
It's meant to give you instantaneous results. It won't maintain. So this is the thing. If you want stuff to just feel generally snappy, get the MacBook Air. If you need long levels of sustained load, then you really need a Pro.
Rendering or crunching.
Yes, anything that takes a long time is a long contiguous, and even some rendering isn't contiguous. It has highs and lows. But if you really need contiguous workflows, absolutely get the Pro.
Just irks me though that they couldn't put the second USB-C port on the other side.
So I asked about that, and it just because of the way buses worked, it makes it a much more complicated machine. And I hate it too because it's on the wrong side for me.
I'm a lefty.
All my power is on the opposite side from that plug, and it's just too far for the cord. I have to it's almost there.
Instead of doing a standalone review, I'm going to do a hands-on tech that compares it to the 2020 Dell XPS 13, which is Dell's version. Much better keyboard, bezel-less screen. It's not a better screen. Apple still does the best LCD screens, but it's a very, very good screen. And it has ports on two sides, which I really like.
Me too.
So fortunately, I don't have to use Windows on it. I put Linux on it immediately. But it'll be an interesting comparison because they're very similar. I mean, this Dell was inspired. The XPS 13 really was inspired by the MacBook Air. And so
and the thing I like is the build quality. It's like my 2011 MacBook. I gave it to one of my siblings, and it is still rock solid. Like it does. Like the screen is old. Like all the things about it, the I/O is older, but it is still like perfect. Yeah. There's no there's no plastic cracking on it. There's no parts coming out.
It feels like a solid brick of aluminum. The whole thing just feels like the Dell not quite that solid. On the other hand, it has a real i7 in it. It has a 2 terabyte hard drive in it. And it was $400 less. So, I think if you want Mac OS, the MacBook Air is a good choice.
Yeah,
that's really the bottom line.
I love what's great about the MacBook Air these days is you can really see how the hardware experience of designing iPads has influenced and improved the Mac, because it really is like if Apple ever decided to make an iPad with a keyboard and a trackpad and a hinge connecting the two, it really wouldn't look much different than what they're selling as the MacBook Air.
Is it an Iris Plus graphics?
Yes,
it is.
Yeah, it is.
So at least it has a fairly. Intel seems to have done pretty well with the new Iris Plus graphics.
I mean, they're no AMD, but they're doing pretty well. I say as someone who really would like AMD.
If I were writing a newsletter, like if I'd been writing a newsletter for like 30 years, I think the MacBook Air would be just right.
Well, I have to say that, when I was writing about it, I was like, finally, I can replace my 2012 MacBook Air.
Exactly.
Because I've been holding on to that machine for so long now, waiting for the keyboard to get fixed.
So you think the keyboard is good enough now? It's still not great, but it's good enough now, right?
That's my hope. I haven't actually set hands on one yet.
Oh, okay.
I was like you. I was like, I'm so close to pushing that order button on the day it came out. Yeah. And I decided against it because it feels like something's going to happen with the low-end MacBook Pro. That the 13 or maybe it'll be a 14, whatever, rumors are saying right now. And I kind of want to see that first. Apple hasn't done a very good job in recent years at differentiating their lines. It's actually getting a little better now, but for a while there was so much overlap between the MacBook and the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro that it was confusing on which one to buy. And so I kind of want to see what happens with the low-end MacBook Pro rev that's probably due out relatively soon. And I'm going to see that, and then I'm going to buy a MacBook Air.
I just love that form factor, and exactly for the reason you mentioned, Renee, because it's solid.
Yeah,
it just feels like it was milled out of aluminum. The whole damn thing, just one solid piece of aluminum. I don't know how they put processors in there. And it's
Johnny told you. Remember, they use water drills to carve out exactly the shape of the.
Exactly.
Let's talk chamfer angles, shall we?
There was some concern. Some people, because they opened it up and they saw that the fan wasn't connected to the heat pipe. So I asked a bunch of different architects from a bunch of different places about that too, and they said that putting the fan on the heat pipe is just a 100% way of knowing that the airflow is going to be there, but it's not necessary. It's just like if you don't want to think about it, that's what you do. But if you model it and you're really confident that your airflow will still work, even if it's not there, then it doesn't change anything. So it just means that Apple is really confident in their airflow modeling.
I haven't noticed any fan noise. What did Ian say about the thermals? They're pretty good.
He said they're basically exactly what Intel. So Intel a couple of years ago changed their messaging on this, and some say it's because they fell behind AMD, and this is what they had to say. But Intel only guarantees base clock speeds now. Turbo is designed for them to increase responsiveness. So they don't expect you to ever get sustained turbo frequencies. They expect those frequencies to ramp up momentarily for like 5 to 15 seconds in order to launch your apps, handle whatever tab you're switching to, do quick processes like in Excel or things like that. And then as it gets hotter, it ramps back. It goes back down to base frequencies to continue on the workload. And that's what they deliver with this.
Perfect. I think that's fine. And you're paying too much attention if you're watching your iStat menu and say, is the CPU? What's going on? I get calls.
If a MacBook Pro does that, it's problematic because you want a Pro to do sustained workloads. Like this is not, again, and Walt Mossberg had a wonderful thread on this where it's like every tech reviewer reviews it as if they're using it for their niche tech needs and they forget about the other 95% of humanity.
Yeah, no, the 16 fixed that perfectly. The 16-inch is a beast. It was really good.
Yes.
Why is the HomePod so cheap? $90 for a limited time.
Same reason as the Beats headphones last week.
90 off.
$90. Oh yeah, it's not $90. It's $200, but that's roughly $90 off.
They're definitely having that Apple TV curve moment, aren't they?
Yeah.
Where they had this thing out.
It's just a hobby.
Yeah, exactly. And they have to get the hardware out to figure out how people are using it, and then that'll tell them how to make the 4K hockey puck size one that people actually want to buy. Yeah. Right now, they
4K
have
audio.
Yeah, it's tough. I thought it was interesting that they moved to tvOS. But it's good to see that they haven't forgotten that this product exists and they're trying to up it a little bit.
What does that mean? Aren't all the iOSs pretty much the same?
They're just optimized for different purposes. Like one of the highlights of tvOS as opposed to like regular iOS is that on the phone there has to be power management because you have to maintain a battery. On tvOS, you're expected that you're always plugged in, and so if you want to optimize apps or optimize features for being like a steady-on beacon, beyond that I can't even guess. But if rumors of them creating a cheaper version or like they can't upgrade and call it a Pro, but to have a less expensive version of it that just simply gives you a really good Siri activated smart speaker that will also act as a HomePod connector. That'll be a good thing because right now I don't know anybody who recommends them to anybody. It's not a terrible product. It's just it's one of the rare occasions where Apple looked at a successful product that Google and Amazon and others have been making and said, we'll make one of those, as opposed to what can we bring to the table that will give the best experience for our users.
I think it's even worse than that. I think that was an old project. Like they were working on that for years and years. And I think their initial thing was we're gonna do that old iPod Wi-Fi hi-fi again. And it was like, well, we're making a speaker. How do we control it? Siri. And it was like that was just the way to control the speaker. And then while they were building it, like the Echo came out, and instead of stopping and saying, wow, people really want smarts. And maybe they just didn't think that people really wanted those, because it's still a very establishing market. People really want cheap speakers with really good assistance on it. They're like, we're shipping a really good speaker, and you control it.
With a crappy
and they didn't
system.
Stop and say, maybe we should change the paradigm of this product.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever actually published information on what kinds of queries are actually asked of these smart speakers?
It's almost always timer.
Really
they had a list.
Yeah.
It's like
I think Ben
music,
Beharon or
weather?
somebody published a survey on it, and it was like timer, play music, and then like everything else was 1%.
That's pretty much all I do. Yeah.
That's because I mean that's the same thing. I play music and set timers.
Yeah.
So turn off lights occasionally.
And now I don't even ask it what the weather is because I'm not leaving my house as often. So.
Yes.
That's what I want to see, the graph of weather queries and how it's plummeted.
These things are so weird. It's like I say, what time is sunrise? And it tells me sunrise for today. And I never need to know sunrise for today when it's already happened. Like just assume it's, and it's all these things that a human would naturally do that all of these things still don't do.
Pretty close to the same time tomorrow, I would think.
It is, but it still feels like you're giving me it's like I do these tests where I run Google Maps, Apple Maps, and something else at the same time.
Doing a lot of fishing or something? What do you need to know the sunrise for?
It's he queries the tides a lot too. So
yeah,
he's one of those Canadian vampires.
Is it a neap tide, Siri? A neap? I want to know. Picks of the week. Adam, what would you like to pick here on your 30th anniversary? What kind of cake would you like?
I believe that I was prompted. There's this newsletter, this website that I just run across it recently, and it's kind of cool.
So good.
Tidbits.com.
Tidbits.com.
And it's funny. I was watching. I mean, I look at it all the time, of course, but watching you look at it on the screen, particularly that issue number 1, I was like, hey. Our redesign of a year, actually almost 2 years, exactly 2 years ago now, it looks great. And after those of us who have been around for that long, I cannot tell you how many redesigns and infrastructure transitions and things like that we've been through. And, the site, it looks great. I love using it. Let
me just say,
so much fun.
As somebody who's always putting sites on screen, there are very few sites that really are this readable, this easy to look at and understand. Your site is so
work into that.
Yeah, it's so good. And I can, of course, I zoom in a little bit, but so we can, read the text and everything. And your site totally handles it beautifully. I mean, it's awesome. So not only is it a great newsletter, but it is a beautiful newsletter. And if you're not, you can read it for free, but by all means, get the membership. Support this guy. You want another 30 years.
And you didn't even scroll enough to find one of them. We have some ads, but honestly, I got so irritated by all the trackers and this and that and the other thing. We build it ourselves. It shows a graphic. That's what it does. There's no trackers anywhere on the site.
And it's a first-party ad, so it won't be blocked. So that's good too. Yeah,
precisely.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are most of them are house ads anyway, because I'm just not into the ads. I'm working for the members, honestly. Those are the people who are
that's what we like,
voluntarily giving us money, and there's the people I'm writing for.
I wish I could say the same thing, but I'm not. I'm not working for you at all.
Well, Matthias and LastPass, I'm going to have to say, two of my favorite companies.
There you go.
I'm a big LastPass user too.
At least we have advertisers we like.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely pick it. Now, do you want to pick anything else?
Well, I did actually have one other thing, which
I see you do, so I want to give you that opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a kind of a note-taking project management to-do app called Agenda, and agenda.com, and it's Mac and iOS. And you can use it. You can use it for free, and then you can subscribe to get more features, which is kind of a neat way of doing it. And they don't do it quite like other people, where when you've subscribed to get new features, you get those features forever.
Oh,
and they keep promising they'll give you more new features.
Oh, this is pretty. I like how this looks.
It's pretty. It's. I can't say. I mean, like, I've been using it for a while. I've taken on some more work on a nonprofit board that I'm on. So I need to be tracking things a little bit more and taking more notes and doing agendas and whatnot. And and I'm doing my agendas in Agenda.
It's kind of calendar focused note taking. That's what I got from it. Is that right?
With yes, although it's also just really well thought out note taking.
Okay.
I mean, there's 10 million note taking apps, right? This one seems to be well thought out, and being able to tie some things to calendar events is a really nice way to do it. Being able to have the same thing, iOS and Mac, constantly updating, all that, and it works. And I'm really impressed by their innovative business model in terms of not just doing it with, you got to pay a subscription fee forever, but you subscribe, you get these features, you have those features forever, and we'll give you new ones again that you can pay for again later.
Nice. Agenda. How much is it?
Good question. We should look. I
don't remember. I don't think it's very expensive.
It's free to download, and then the other features are not terribly expensive. $10, $20 most. So the problem with being a reviewer is you sometimes don't internalize those things.
Yeah, exactly. Andy Hanatko, your pick of the week.
I got two tips, rather one pick and one tip. I was reminded that a good friend of mine, Trish, who's a colorist for DC Comics, he's been coloring comics forever, posted a tip on Twitter that you can't get latex or you can't get nitrile gloves because on Amazon or in stores because they're restricted to medical. But what you can get are these things, which is things that she uses or used to use when she was coloring non-digitally. These are finger cuts. These are like little, just like latex or nitrile like finger gloves, so that if you're in a position where you're picking up a pizza and you just have to type in something on the little touch screen.
That's a great idea.
And you can't get regular gloves. And they're cheap. You get a bag of like 100 for like basically nothing. I think you would look silly having one on each finger, but in terms, and also
I can see somebody saying, Gee, Andy, those condoms are awfully small.
No. I was avoiding that, but that's
They're
fine.
finger condoms. That's what they are.
And as with if you do have actual real gloves, when you take them off, make sure that you don't touch the actual surface that you've contaminated. But some people were asking, like, where do I get gloves? Where do I get gloves? Like, well, you can't, but maybe this will work. The other thing, though, is I've always thought that one of the casualties of my job is that I will know about a certain feature in Mac OS because I wrote about it or I talked about it when the OS was updated. But then that was processed by my learn about something and then explain to other people brain as opposed to my Mac user brain. And so I was kind of chagrined a few months ago to realize that ever since Yosemite, the Finder has had this wonderful batch rename feature, where if you just select a bunch of files, like I've been downloading unavailable in the United States of America, like British TV that I've kind of gotten hooked on. And to add it to my Plex server, I have to, the beginning of it has to be what is the name, the official recognized name of the series, plus like the year it was released. The last part of it has to be the episode series number, blah, blah, blah. So I'll have like 19 of these files that have to be modified. And all you have to do is just select the files in the batch, just go to the file menu or the contextual menu, rename. You can essentially say, do a search and replace over the text of these names, put something in the front, put something in the back. It's so easy that it was one of those, oh, that's right, I do remember that. Okay. I could have been doing that all along for the past 2 or 3 years instead of just for the past 2 months. Okay. Live and learn, or live and relearn.
Your finger cut inspired me to mention this thing that Micah Sargent talked me into buying. It's called the Hygiene Hand Antimicrobial Brass EDC Door Opener and Stylus. It is. So how many times have you had to touch a bacteria-laden thing with your hand and wish you had more sanitizer? Well, now you have the Hygiene Hand, which is a brass thing attached to your keychain with which you can punch, hook, or press. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. Aren't you glad you got the Hygiene Hand? They have, believe it or not, raised $388,000 on Kickstarter. They were looking for $5,000. 8 days to go. And you can even put it on one of those carabiner squishy things so you can just get your Hygiene Hand out anytime you need it.
I'm going to add that to the list of things that would have made someone look absolutely bat-spit crazy a year ago.
Like a Batman villain, right?
What's that URL again?
Like the Riddler with
Kickstarter, search for Hygiene Hands. Renee Ritchie, pick of the week.
So we talked about this in passing before, but I just wanted to highlight it. So Apple has a bunch of stuff that they've been putting online. Traditionally, Apple stores did this big revamp where they became all about the community and everything was designed to have people in close proximity touching everything. And the Apple stores are shut down. And unfortunately, that means you can't get Today at Apple, which are these magnificent classes that they teach at almost every Apple retail location that includes design and prototyping and development and photography and music. And they're starting to put those online. So you can go to apple.com/today and you can, there's only a few now, but more and more keep coming, and basically take these classes online, which is great. And they also have sort of a fun PDF up at apple.co/creativity for kids, which just walks you through a bunch of different stuff that you can do with your kids while they're staying at home. So there's also teacher resources, and they're putting just a ton of stuff online for people over the last month. And I've been linking to as much of it as I can. But in terms of just, they're spending millions on free resources for parents and teachers and kids. And if you haven't checked them out already, it's well worth your time to go look through them and see if any of them are of interest to you.
So these are people who would be in the stores, but they can't be. So they're doing it out of their houses.
Yeah.
And which is great.
Yeah, better than the late night talk shows.
Yeah. Apparently. Yeah. Well, Apple has made sure they're better produced. I have to say that. Yeah.
I will admit there's obviously people who are, there's people who are completely at home, nothing to do because their jobs don't exist anymore or whatever. And I certainly feel for them, and they are looking for things to do. And then there's the spectrum over to the people like us who have, if anything, all the same things to do and more. And I'm like, but I want to take those classes. Why can't I find time?
It's really true. It's really true. I completely agree with you. I still have exactly the same duties as I've had before, but somehow I feel like I should have more free time to do all of these fun things that are being offered. I bought a sewing machine, Adam, and I have
and a sourdough
maker, and
I am making kombucha.
Half-Life.
So well, there you go. Making
Half-Life,
kombucha. There's Half-Life Alex, and the pressure on me to do leisure time activities.
You're only one Leo.
There's only one of me now.
We need staff to do our leisure.
Actually,
and you're trying to learn Cobalt. I mean, like, when is
I
it
thought
too much?
it'd be useful for me to know Cobalt. Actually, we just got word from the Sonoma County Health Department this morning that starting Friday, everybody in everywhere except at home will have to wear masks. So it is a mask requirement, and all employees in buildings that are there as essential employees, which includes the handful of people who come in here, will have to wear masks the whole time. And who has masks? So I thought, well, maybe I could just set up a little roadside stand, masks for sale. Be a nice little, sideline for me. I have watched.
Do you paint a face on them so they work with Face ID?
That's a good idea. I've watched more mask making videos. Some of these videos have 10 million views. I guarantee you they had none until
My
now.
entire feed is souffle pancakes, whipped coffee, and face masks. It's
whipped coffee.
Those are the things that we're.
That's another thing I gotta make.
Everything. It's the year of meringue and face masks. That just apparently is what it is.
I cannot believe that the cafe press type sites of the world are not yet spun up to do custom masks.
I know. Well, there are. I mean, there are on Etsy. I mean, it's been a boon for Etsy sellers.
Yeah, but no, I mean the true cafe press ones where literally you just.
I know. I want Twit 15th anniversary face masks.
I want all the news you can bite for Tidbits.
Yeah,
I mean, our
exactly.
original logo. Our original tag.
Don't you think that I am of the opinion that this is going to be the new fashion trend? This is how neckties started. Instead of people are going to wear fashion.
Cravat.
Yeah.
It's like the Princess Bride. They're really very comfortable. Everyone's going to look like ninjas soon.
You guys are great. I can't imagine anybody I'd rather be quarantined with. Congratulations. 30 years, Adam and Tanya Engst. Fantastic.
So much fun to celebrate with you guys.
You are such a boon.
Most fun I've had in my 30th year.
Oh, seriously, what a contributor to the Mac community. If you love the Mac community, part of the reason you love it is because of this guy right here. Adam, tidbits.com. Everybody should give you $20. Become a contributor. It's really worth it. It's such a great newsletter. Thank you, Adam. It's really nice to see you.
Good to see you too, and at least when I can still see your face, because I guess next time we'll be wearing masks.
We'll all be wearing masks.
We'll look like Mortal Kombat characters.
It's going to be a little weird when we're doing the show. I don't know how I'm going to
Or like Cobra.
Do I sound like Bane?
Detective.
It's amazing. Andy Notco. Thank you for being here. Are you still doing the radio thing, dude?
Yeah, but this is now what you're seeing here is WGBH Studios South, or at least that's what I'm going to be calling the government
right.
when that's how I'm doing it for tax purposes, I think. Yeah. So I'm doing still roughly every Friday from right here, and oh my God, the great thing about doing the radio like at WGBH is that it was the one time that like I'm doing essentially this, but I have to shower, I have to shave, I have to put on a shirt. I oftentimes opt to put on a tie because hey, I'm going to be taking the commuter rail into work just like normal people, and then but now it's back to there's no video, so
Yeah.
just mute the microphone when you're biting into the sandwich.
Who needs
and thinking
pants?
Thoughtfully.
Right, pants are overrated. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Renee Ritchie. Congratulations. Also, here Adam is at the end of his career. You're just beginning. It's a wonderful thing.
Oh, please! If I could accomplish 1,000th of what he's done,
I know,
1,000th of time, I would be proud.
I just hope I'll be around in 30 years to congratulate you on your 30th anniversary. YouTube.com.
The Laporte AI will be fully functional.
How do you know it's not already? YouTube.com/Rene Ritchie. And he's Rene Ritchie on the Twitter, and it's so great to have you. Stay warm. Don't get flooded out. Jeez.
Trying.
We do MacBreak Weekly from our sterilized studio, the beautiful sterile LastPass studios in Petaluma. Every Tuesday around 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. You could stop by. Not the studio. We've locked that down, but you could certainly watch us live. twit.tv/live. There's audio and video. Does my nose look funny? And does this mask make my nose look fat?
Looks like it's cold there in the studio.
Headlights are on. You can also join us in the chat room at irc.twit.tv. It's just a dart. I swear to God, it's just a dart. If you want to get on-demand versions of the show, go to MacBreak, our Twit website, twit.tv, and the MacBreak place is twit.tv/MacBreakWeekly, MBW, rather. Twit.tv/MBW. It's only been the same thing for 15 years, but anyway, twit.tv/MBW. You can also find it on YouTube, but the best thing to do is subscribe in your favorite podcast application. That way you'll get a copy of it the minute it's available without any human interaction at all. Please subscribe.
Yep. Zero touch deployment.
Zero touch. Now, my friends, it's time to get back to making sourdough bread because break time is over.